Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? How's the day today?
Things are going well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. And to our audience, I will quickly introduce Mark. So, Mark is a CPA having almost a decade long of experience in Big Fours, and Mark has had successfully started his accounting CPA firm and had also sold it. And Mark has a great balance of experience of working in corporate and having one's own firm also. And Mark has passion is passionate about uh, automating CPA firms, accounting firms, bookkeeping firms, and helping them scale, grow, and you know, kind of uh, a life savior. So why I'm calling Mark a life savior is we'll discuss that. We'll discuss what are the problems accounting bookkeeping firms are facing and how Mark is helping them to come out of their problems and to see the growth which they have always tried to achieve, but sadly we're having a difficult time to reach that. So, Mark,
Right.
uh, let's start with, I'm curious to know what inspired you to take up accounting as a
That might
career.
be that might be the reason why I can help accountants is that I didn't start my college, you know, path wanting to be a CPA. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be in
Okay.
design. I was creative. I wanted to build things.
Yeah.
Um, but the program that I was looking at was a master's degree. And so I needed an undergrad degree,
Mhm.
which I thought business would be a good fit for. And about 3 years in, I was like, hey, I like this business stuff. I like understanding many different facets that you have to understand to be successful in business. And I really like that. But this is, third
Mhm.
year in college. I had 1 year left to go. And so I had to make a decision what I wanted to do within business. Was I going to do marketing? Was I going to do
Mhm.
operations? Was I going to do accounting? And unfortunately, or fortunately, my dad is a CPA as well. And he had been running his own practice for
Oh,
about 30 years at that point. And he
nice.
had his own firm. So I understood what it kind of took to be an entrepreneurial CPA, start your own firm, grow your own book
Mhm.
of business. So I graduated college, did an internship with Ernst and Young, and then I joined Ernst and Young after I graduated and was there for about 4.5 years. But I can't say that I had this burning passion from the very beginning to be a CPA or go into accounting.
Mhm.
At one point, I
Okay.
I promised myself that I would never do what my dad does because I saw the stress that he would go through during tax season. But when it turned out that
Okay.
I did exactly what my dad, was doing. I started a firm and had all that stress during tax season. So I knew accountants knew business well, and I wanted to be in that space. And so I thought, hey, I might as well get some letters behind my name that could provide me some credibility and give me some opportunities.
Okay. Great. Great. That's so interesting. And how has your accounting experience been so far? How's the journey
Well,
been so far?
yeah, so you mentioned before, I started at Ernst and Young, a big accounting firm, and from that situation, I learned the importance of processes, standardization of things. When you run a big firm, you need to make sure that everybody's doing the same thing in the same way, just so training can be more effective,
Mhm.
communication can be more clear, expectations can be communicated and met. And then from there, I didn't get to work with a lot of small businesses at EY. I worked with large multinational corporations primarily, as well as some smaller local enterprises. But I never got to see the beginning from the beginning to the end in terms of all the pieces of the puzzle for the business. But then after
Mhm.
almost 3 years in audit, I joined the due diligence team, and that's where I got to see more of a fuller picture with businesses. And then I was there for a year and a half and left and joined went to a corporate role. and was a controller for operations and the financial department of a manufacturing company. And
Mm.
that's where I got to see the numbers directly interface with the operations of a business. And that's where my appetite for advisory work came from, because I enjoyed understanding,
Nice.
okay, so if we change these variables in operations, how is that going to impact the numbers? And then you reverse engineer that. And coming as an advisor from an accounting background, you can really create a plan for your business clients where they're operationally focused
Mm.
and you're numbers focused, and you want to make that bridge between what the numbers are saying and what they need to do in their operations. And I think those are the best advisors that have that operational experience where they can speak to, okay, what are the actions that are driving these numbers, and how does that action need to be adjusted to change or improve those numbers?
Nice, nice. Absolutely. Like, I totally agree. And I think that skill is helping you in advising your clients. So you kind of have the business sense, the finance sense, and the operation sense. So this is, I think, three important pillars required to successfully not just run any business, not just run a business, but to also run an accounting firm.
Yeah.
Awesome, great.
Well,
So
that's exactly it. I didn't even talk about, the accounting firm. After 3 years of operations, I started my own firm. I moved across the country to be close to my in-laws, and that's where I started to get into, running a CPA firm, learning all the ins and outs
Mhm.
of how CPA firms struggle, what they struggle with, where can, small improvements be made to really increase profitability and reduce the stress for the owners. And that's what I
Mm,
never saw myself as a firm owner for the rest of my life, but I saw it as an opportunity to
mm,
build a
mm.
skill as well as understand an industry in its entirety.
Nice. Sumak, do you think that most of the accountants lack entrepreneurial skills, business skills, and they are totally into just tax filing, accounting, bookkeeping? Uh, what do you think about this? Am I right if I say so?
I would say that a lot of accountants need to work on their entrepreneurial skills. Most of them go into the industry expecting to do either a lot of tax preparation or financial accounting, and that can work when you're working within a big firm. But even if you go up the ladder in a big firm, you start getting away from those tasks and you start managing people. And that's where a lot of people don't
Yeah.
have a lot of practice or skill, is managing people. But if you move outside of a large firm and start your own business, not only do you have to manage people, but you have to manage business systems and technology. And then you have to worry about marketing and selling as well. So, people I
Mm,
focus on with my clients that I coach, I focus on teams, tech, and trajectory. So teams, how do you manage people? Tech, okay,
mm,
what are the systems that you're using within your firm? And then trajectory is, how do you define a niche? How do you market to that niche? And how do you grow a firm that is more intentional and is more of an expert firm than a generalist firm? And those are the big three skills that I
mm.
think most accountants are missing when they start their own firms. They're like, hey, I'm good at tax preparation, so I'm going to do this for myself. And then they realize that it takes a whole lot more than being good at tax to run a successful accounting firm.
Sumak, you had started your own accounting firm from scratch, and that's not something very easy to do. What were the
No.
challenges you faced, and how did you build this firm into a firm which was then you were able to sell? Because to be able to sell a business, that business has to have the best processes, has to have very happy clients. So how was your journey of starting a firm, and how did you make it good enough to be sold?
Right. So when I started, I had a small book of business. So I started my firm while I was still a controller at the manufacturing company. I was doing bookkeeping and tax prep on evenings and
Mhm.
weekends. But when I moved across the country, I didn't have a full-time job, and I had this small group of clients that made me about maybe $15 to $2,000 a month. So it wasn't a lot of revenue by any means. And so I needed to um, figure out how to find new clients. That was the big blockade at first. I also moved to a farm, so I'm not in a large city where there's a lot of businesses around. So I had
Mhm.
to figure out how to do digital
Okay.
marketing. And digital marketing is more important than ever, even if you're in a big city, because if you want to become an expert firm, you need to find the same businesses but in different locations. Meaning, if you want to become an expert working with, let's say, mechanics, car mechanics, there's only so many in a geographical area. But if you want to be that expert in that space, you need to be able to attract and find clients, across the country in many geographies to build that expertise. So with my firm, I
Right.
was in one part of the country. I had clients from where I moved from, and I started building kind of my clientele in those two areas of the country. And at first, they were quite general. Uh, I was a generalist accountant. I kind of accepted all different types of clients. And then over time, I started to refine who I wanted to work with and how I wanted to work with them. So I was leaning towards, you know, businesses that weren't afraid of online or remote support. There are some businesses, typically older
Mhm.
business owners, that will avoid working with a firm that is only online. They like that interaction. However, I had clients that were 300 kilometers or 3,000 kilometers away. And so I didn't have that opportunity to, meet them face to face regularly. So I was trying to figure out how to find clients. I was figuring out my systems technology, right? So I was in the cloud from the beginning, so I knew that I had to have cloud enabled tools from the very beginning. I focused on making
Mhm.
sure my clients could do everything from their phone. So mobility for me was really important. Making sure that their client portal was
Nice.
accessible by their phone and not like navigating on this desktop website and pinching and squeezing or pinching and enlarging to log into their portal. I wanted a truly native mobile experience for my clients. Now keep in mind, this is back in 2017, 2018, so a few years ago. So a lot of the technology that we
Mhm.
have today was either non-existent back then or kind of developing their systems. So
Yeah.
finding clients, building technology, and then keeping on top of the workflow that was coming in. So,
Mhm.
okay, so technology is one piece, workflows and automation is another piece. The technology in itself is good, but you
Mhm.
have to build the automations or you have to understand how they work. And so, building workflows around those systems is very important. You can get a QuickBooks online directly off the shelf and it can work for you, but there's a bunch of different things that you need to plug into it to offer different types of services for different types of clients. Xero, I was a big fan of Xero. Xero is
Yeah.
the same way. It's a great tool off the shelf, but if you really want to use its power, you need to understand the ecosystem that it exists in with the other apps that you can plug into it and connect to it. So all these
Right.
things, I
Right.
was learning kind of all these things all at once, and it was stressful to say the least. Sometimes there were cash flow issues, not generating enough revenue, not finding those clients fast enough. So yeah, there's a lot to go over when you're starting out. And so what I've done is try to make that process easier for the clients that I work for. So instead
Mhm.
of being a generalist firm,
Mhm.
you know, be an expert firm, go after a certain group of clients, a certain type of business instead of going after everyone, because that will focus your marketing. That will also inform how you build your workflows, how you interact with them. If you work with doctors, doctors don't have overly complex businesses. And so the
Mhm.
systems that you provide them can be more simple compared to, let's say, like an e-commerce business that might be selling on Shopify or WooCommerce, maybe eBay, maybe Etsy. And those businesses rely on systems to work efficiently. And you can get that information, turn it into digestible, actionable data for your client and provide some real value for them in running their business. So, you know,
Mm.
pick a niche, double down on it, get really good at understanding their industry, the tools that they use, how they use them, what are kind of the best practices for that industry, and then you can add a lot more value to your client when you're discussing with them, when you're offering them
Mm.
services. Yeah.
Right, right. Great, great, Mark. So, Mark, very early on in your practice, you had adopted technology. So definitely that would have been a risk, because every time when we adopt technology, you are doing something which most of your peers are not doing. Most of your fellow CPAs, accountants are not doing. So, how did you take that risk decision of going completely online and spending your time on technology adoption? How did you get that how did you get that develop that risk appetite?
Yeah, I guess for me, it was I had to be online, number one, because I was living in the country. I was living away from all of my clients. So it was a matter of survival, for one thing. And then the other component was that I wanted to be profitable. I needed to make more money. And technology is that tool to be more efficient in your processes. And I didn't
Mm.
answer your question entirely. I kind of went off on a tangent. But when I sold my firm, the systems that I had in place were really appealing to the buyers that I spoke with. So I spoke with about 25 potential buyers. Um, there were a whole bunch of other buyers that wanted to understand more about my firm, but I ended up speaking to about 25 of them, and they discussed, what technologies I was using. So the basic accounting software, and then how I was, driving all my other workflows, and that was a big conversation with the buyers of my that wanted to buy my firm, and ultimately that's what drove the price up for my firm was the fact that I didn't have an office, that I was remote, and that basically I could transfer all my client files by giving them access to my Google Drive instead of, you know, packing up a bunch of paper files and sending them or whatever it may be. And I had all my processes cataloged and documented in videos. And so the buyer that ended up buying my firm, he just got access to the library videos and could understand how I ran my firm without me being there. And then he had training videos for his team members as well. So it was a way to be really efficient on my end, as well as deliver like a decent product that was my firm to the buyer. So that's what I emphasize with everyone is like if you're not using technology, you need to start. Because it's not only going to make your firm profitable right now, but it will make your firm extremely valuable and sought after when you go to sell it. I know that there are a lot of firms in rural parts of the United States that the owner wants to retire from, but because there's no buyers in the area, it's going to be really
Yeah.
hard to sell that firm. I speak with brokers all the time, and they say there are some firms that are just not sellable because there's nobody within 100 miles that wants to buy that firm. And because they're not in the cloud, they have to rely on a local buyer, and they just don't exist.
Mm.
And so these valuable firms are not being sold because there's no one to buy them.
I think you have made one very important point. So usually, what we come across is that every time we call such firms as traditional firms, who do not have the practice of using much technology. So whenever we try to encourage such firms to use technology, they always complain about cost. So one thing which you really were able to see, and that really helped you, was that understanding that technology eventually reduces the cost, and reduces
Yeah.
the cost significantly. So
Well,
yeah, these traditional
and
firms, they fail to understand that. Yeah,
well, sorry, I cut you off there.
please.
Um, but that's the thing. Like, traditional firms, they just want to add more bodies to make things go faster or be more profitable, because a lot of them are still
Yeah,
attached to the billing hourly. Um, but when you use technology,
mm,
you get more efficient and faster. And if your revenue is based on hours worked, you don't want that efficiency, and you see this technology as a cost instead of an enabler, instead of something that can help you maintain your margins but reduce the amount of work that you do. And in moving forward, we're
yeah,
going to have to rethink how we build our teams. So instead of having four bodies doing the work from junior accountant to senior manager, you're going to have an intermediate accountant that knows and understands the technology, and then maybe a manager that does the oversight and review of that work. And so teams are
mm,
going to be smaller. They're going to have more technology, and they're going to leverage, offshore talent way more than they're using right now. And so that's going to be the makeup of
mm.
of the firms moving forward. There's going to be technology, there's going to be fractional offshore talent, and there's going to be smaller leadership teams on these firms.
Awesome. It sounds so good to just hear this model. I really cannot imagine when firms start to use this model and start seeing the benefits of this model. And Mark, you have been in this industry for so long, and you have had a good mix of experiences. So, what are the common mistakes an accounting firm owner, bookkeeping firm owner usually do, and what are the common challenges they face with respect to growth, manpower, etc.?
Right. So I think the big challenge is not being really intentional from the very beginning. And that means they become generalist firms. I think we all start as generalist firms, but the firms
Yeah,
that can
yeah.
find a niche right away and go that way faster then become expert firms. And they can instantly charge
Mm,
more for what they do, even if it's compliance work. They understand the ins and outs of the clients that they work with. And yes, they're delivering compliance services, but there is so much more value around their comments, their suggestions, and the advice that they give. So, advice is
yeah.
to firms that are starting out or are struggling to find real traction and growth is get really focused on one industry. And I primarily work with firms between 1 and 3 partners, more agile firms that can make decisions quickly. And so I tell them to focus on one. And if you have 3 partners, maybe you can focus on 2 industries because you have that leadership there to kind of direct and guide the firm. But if you're a smaller firm, focus on one industry. You can maybe focus on a few sub niches within there. But, an example that I gave on a previous podcast is working with salons or spas. There are salons and broad industry, but within there are salons and spas that sell online, that have inventory, that may sell packages
Mhm.
for either weddings or other events where they help people get together, and that's delivering a higher value product. And if they sell online, then they have an e-commerce component to it. And so, if you present your firm as the firm that works with salons and spas that sell online their packages and products, that is a big enough industry that you can market your services coast to coast. And as soon as you have 2 or 3 businesses with that kind of operational structure, you can deliver real value to additional businesses with that same structure. It's way easier to become an expert. Um, if there's a firm that has one salon and they've worked with them year after year for 10 years, there's a level of expertise there. I won't deny that. You've been there with 10 years, been with them for 10 years. You've seen growth, you've seen the challenges that they've encountered, and there is an expertise there. You can get more expertise with working with 3 businesses over 3 years than you can with one business over 10 years because you have that repetition. You can see the pattern matching, the threads within that industry much easier when you have a group of businesses with a similar structure. So I can't emphasize that enough. I'm quite passionate about that is, go after a specific business structure and, and I'm talking not only
Mm.
like industry, but like, do they sell online? Online e-commerce is a big section of retail on the internet now, and a lot of accountants don't know how to deal with that information. There's sales tax implications when you're selling
Absolutely.
online, so things like that. So mistakes, being too general for too long, that's a big mistake. Number two is
Mm.
not being online, being digitally marketing your services from the very beginning. uh, you know Posting a sign out front in your office and just waiting for people to walk in is a really bad strategy. It doesn't work. You're going to get all types of businesses. You need to be more intentional with who you market to and how you market. And then embrace
Right.
technology. Try to understand, spend the time to learn, and give your team the time to learn technology. Because, as I mentioned on LinkedIn a
Mm.
couple of weeks ago, your car, you can put really, really expensive tires on your car, but if they're not inflated, they're no good. You can have cheap tires on your car, and if they're fully inflated, your car will run well. Now, the tires
Mm.
might be cheap, but if you're fully
Nice.
utilizing them, then they'll do well. And that's same with technology. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't know how to use the technology to its fullest extent, and they're running their firm on flat tires.
Nice. So whichever technology you're using, you have to use it to the fullest. First do this, then move on to a better technology.
Yeah, yeah, and I know some people that will get a technology and they don't have the time to invest in learning all the features, right?
Ma-
And so they,
Yeah.
they're using a
Mm.
fraction of what the tool can do, and it's a little bit more efficient than what they were doing previously, and so they think it's okay. But
Mm.
give the innovation in your firm is going to come from your team. Is going to come from having a little extra time to you know do experiments or trial and error and figure out what's the best way to do something. you know I always,
Mm.
yeah, I always tried to have my employees you know spend time figuring something out before they get into it, and I would give them rough guidelines about how I would do it or
Uh-huh.
what I found to be successful, but would always put the onus on them
Mm.
to figure out a faster way to do it. And they usually came
Mm.
up with a faster way. And then we would take that and kind of tell everybody else how to do it, and they would iterate on that, and it would get faster and faster. And there was no penalty for being slow. We want people to experiment and to innovate, and you can't do that with you know worrying about the time.
Right, right. Nice, great, great. And what about there has been going on this thing that there's shortage of good manpower or shortage of manpower in total in the accounting industry. What's your take on this? Is there actually a shortage of good manpower? And if so, what would you suggest accounting firms to do?
Right. So we know in the United States and Canada that there are less students going into accounting in college and university. That's a fact. We do know that there's a lot of people in Canada and the United States that are retiring in the next few years. That is a fact. Is there a shortage of good accounting um, people? I would say depends who you speak to and their perspective. There are definitely fewer bodies in the industry in North America for sure. That's a fact. However, you and I are
Mm.
speaking. I'm in Canada. You're in India. You are a CA. You're trained like how I was trained. When I was at EY, I worked with an Indian team at EY for some of the due diligence projects that we worked on, and we would leverage each other's expertise. And so I don't think so. There has to be a reframing of what these teams look like. Like I mentioned earlier, teams
Mm.
have to be more technologically advanced, and they have to embrace fractional or full time offshore work. There's a lot of talent out there that it's not being tapped into. And, some people say, well, I'm
Mm.
made in America. It's like, okay, well, that's great. But you can, if you're doing all the work because you can't find anybody to join your firm, there are fantastic options outside of the United States, outside of North America. I've spoken with
Mm.
not only offshores in India and the Philippines, but also in Latin America. So we're talking Venezuela and Colombia that have English speaking accounting professionals as well. So it's just understanding and being comfortable with having a dynamic team that's not all local in your office or in your city.
Other solutions. So once a solution which you have been speaking for such a long time about, and are doing a really great job, is automation. So I think, if accounting firms are ready to adopt automation, are ready to give it a try, you know believe in your expertise, so they can believe that, okay, Mark had done it for his firm, Mark has done it for so many clients. And so Mark can really help. That could really be a replacement to, or maybe a solution to, a shortage of talent, shortage of manpower, till a great extent, definitely. And yes, there are other ways to yeah, solve that as well. Okay, so Mark, so how, I'm curious to know, how do you help your clients here in improving their growth, automating their processes, etc.
Right. So it kind of depends at what stage they're at in their firm. Currently I'm working with a firm owner that has been running his own practice for 15 years. He just separated from his business partner. He
Mm.
wants to reinvent his firm to a certain degree. So, yes, we can talk about automations, we can talk about all these things,
Yes.
but he already
And
has a client.
sorry to cut you, and he has been in the industry for 15 years, and he is ready to transform his business.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
exactly.
willing to transform
Because
his business. He wants to automate, and awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And
Great, great.
he's a little bit older than I am, but he understands that if he wants to be in the profession until he retires, which is probably maybe 15 years more, he needs to make
Mm.
changes because the old ways of doing things, timesheets, manual processes, like they're the reason why a lot of accountants are miserable. Like it's these things that these traditional firms are hanging on to that are making people really unhappy in their roles because they're doing work attached to a clock, and there's no incentive to get faster, there's no incentive to get better, and the people at the top are just kind of waiting it out because they have pretty good margins. Like a lot of traditional accounting firms, they have pretty good margins because they're grinding their staff, and so for them there's really no incentive to change. But this client of mine, he wants to change. He wants to reinvent how he does things. He already has a book of business. He was already making a decent amount of money. He has some team members, but he realizes to make the transition to the next 10 years of his firm, he needs to, we've worked on finding a niche for him, finding a space that he wants to work in, finding the technology that will help him service that industry better. And then what are those internal changes that he needs to make to deliver more value and work less? There's this idea that
Mm.
you can automate everything and then not spend any time working. That's not true. You can automate a lot of stuff, but then the work that you do is more fulfilling. Yes, there's less hours on the clock. I worked maybe 35, 40 hours a week um, through the entire year with my
Mm.
firm. Some weeks were much less during the summer and whatnot, but I never was spending 60 or 70 hours working. I thought that was insane. A good busy work week for me was 35 hours, and that's what I enjoyed. So working with my clients, like, okay, fundamentally, I think you need to get a niche, and that's basically all the clients that I talk to. That's an issue. They are going too general, and a lot of them like the idea of being automated, but before you can automate, you need to standardize, because you can't automate 10 different things. You automate two or three things, and that's what you build your firm around. So you need to standardize, delivery, onboarding, marketing, because you can't build a system that only works, or I guess you can't find good leads consistently if you have a system that only works when you work. You need to find a system that will work
Mhm.
automatically and without your support. And so focusing on marketing, focus on onboarding, fulfillment, and then follow up, and make sure that your communication all along the way is on point. Communication is the one thing that will leave a bad taste in a client's mouth if you don't respond to emails, or you don't aren't proactive with upcoming opportunities and threats to their business. Like, communication will make or break a firm.
Right. And you have been stressing so much on having a niche industry, having a niche market. One thing which I tell to accountants in my circle is that, yes, just what you told. When we start, we are a general accountant. We take up
Mhm.
every kind of work which comes across, which but we cannot always be chasing clients. So only if we develop a niche, yes, and we develop a name in that niche, yes, then
Mhm.
clients would come chasing us. Yeah. And that
Absolutely.
is also where, when we are able to, yeah, develop an expertise, and there is a margin for expertise. That's an additional margin which we can charge for when we have an expertise. And when we reach that stage, we'll be spending lesser amount of hours and we'll be making more money than previously. Great. Yeah. And can you share some success stories of your clients with whom you had worked with, and whom you really helped in reaching some goals which they have been trying to reach for so many years, and you really helped them to reach that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with we're full on right now with tax season. So in Canada and the United States, most tax preparers are
Mm.
quite busy right now. And I worked with a cohort
Oh,
of tax firms that we went through the automation of their 1040 workflow. And there's been a lot of really good comments come in around building automations that not only lead their client along, but also can follow up with them automatically. So if a client sits at a certain step, if
nice.
they're uploading documents and they're waiting there for longer than 3 days, then they'll get an email notification saying, hey, can you get back into the portal and finish this part of the workflow? And then they go in, and it pushes them along. So yeah, there's been some pretty cool things. Just like, you've
And
changed
that's
my
an
firm,
automated
you've
email.
changed my life. Say that again.
And that is an automated email.
Yeah, yeah.
That email
So it's
notification that goes to the client. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's on a drip campaign sequence. So when they move into, in this program that we're
Nice.
using, when they move into a step, it puts them in this an audience bucket, and that audience will get this drip campaign sequence as long as they're in that bucket.
Mhm.
And so, but if they complete that step, then the program pushes them out of that audience into the next audience. And each audience has their own kind of
Nice.
drip sequence to prod people along if they're not progressing through the workflow.
Awesome. Awesome. Just adding want to add one thing here. So following up with clients itself is a hectic task. That itself is a task on its own.
Yeah.
And yeah, automating just that part is can be such a big relief, such a big relief. And the mental health of accountants during tax season is really poor, and their mental health gets affected, their personal life gets affected, their family, they get affected. I think when automation is it has to be in the list, in the maybe to-do list of every CP, of every firm, every accounting and bookkeeping firm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be on the employee roster, right? It's got to be It's got to be your first hire, and the hire that you retrain over and over and over again. Because the nice thing about
Mm.
automation is that it doesn't sleep, it doesn't need vacation, and it can work for you 24 hours a day.
I think we have spoken a lot about the benefits of adopting technology, benefits of automation. Let's talk about what will happen if an accounting firm, bookkeeping firm, do not accept technology, do not accept automation. Not Let's not talk about what will happen in the next 1 or 2 years. Say 10 years down the line. So let's talk about a accounting firm which has been in the business for 10, 15 years already, and that this particular firm owner is reluctant to automation, reluctant to adopt technology. uh, what do you think will be the challenges they would face 10 years or 15 years down the line? Let's also talk about that.
Yeah, so because the market is changing, um, there's a lot of businesses that are going to be bought and sold over the next decade, and there's going to be a lot of businesses that are just going to die and go away because they aren't equipped, or they aren't built for either transacting online or meeting the needs of the market. And
Mm.
I think accounting firms that don't embrace technology, they might have a client base that is okay with that, but I think that they'll either be forced to move because their clients want better technology and better support for the systems that they'll use, or these
Yeah.
firms are just going to lose their clients quite quickly,
Mm.
because accountants can no longer
Right.
dictate accountants can no longer dictate the tools that these businesses use. When I was running my firm, I don't know how many clients I spoke to that would join me, and I said, well, why are you using this tool? Oh, this is what my last accountant recommended for me. um, in the future, or even now, there are businesses that are using Shopify, that are using Stripe, that are using proposal apps, and they have what they call embedded finance within these technologies. And so they can create profit and
Mm.
loss statements. They can create, a list of AR and AP within these systems. They don't need a QBO or a Xero to kind of do a lot of their financial business management. And so these businesses, they have some financial systems, but they're embedded in their operational systems. And accountants that can't or won't understand these operational systems to plug them into their accounting software, they're not going to be able to survive. Because if the accountant says, oh, can you print me a list of all your sales from last year? The business owner is going to say, no, like, it's already in my system. Can't you just get it there? And they're going to say, well, I don't know how to get it, or I can't plug in to get that information. Um, but accountants like myself and other cloud enabled firms can plug into those systems, can pull all that information out, can create some really good financial reporting details, infographics, direction for the business owner. They can do the compliance work, but then deliver a really meaningful bit of information based on that embedded finance within their operations tool. So that's what's going to
Right.
really force these clients or these firms to upgrade their technology, is that their clients, there's a whole bunch that are maybe resistant to technology, that are retiring, selling their businesses, and the rising generation of new business owners are going to demand these tools be used with their accountant. Otherwise, they're going to become
Mm.
obsolete.
I think that is the word. So uh, all the accounting firms right now, they may feel that automation or adopting technology may just help them to increase their margins, or reduce their cost, grow faster. Okay, right now accounting firms may feel so, but in the future it's going to become a question of survival. You adopt
Mm-hmm.
technology, automate your process, you are going to survive. You're not doing that, man, you cannot survive longer. Maybe a couple of years you may be able to pull on, but sooner or later, you wouldn't realize, and your clients would start leaving you at a unprecedented rate, like in the future, maybe 10,
Yeah.
15 years down the line.
I heard this saying that you know all companies are tech companies, every single one of them. Not that they're building a new technology
Okay.
or a new app, but they are all built on technology. Um, maybe I know
Mm,
there's some business owners that have handwritten receipts and they deliver a good, and they don't use a lot of technology in their business, but those businesses are
mm,
disappearing. Online invoicing is
mm,
becoming the norm. Um, you know, Selling online is becoming very common. Like these are technology dependent businesses that, like you said, can only
mm,
survive if they continue to use this technology. Yes, it's efficient. Yes, it keeps
yeah,
costs lower, increases productivity, but it is a matter of survival. And accountants are going to be the same way. If
mm,
if clients cannot interface with their accountant in a meaningful and efficient way, they'll find another accountant. It's just plain and simple. And there's going to be a lot of service
yeah,
providers out there that will gladly take business away from these archaic firms.
right. And you know what? The next generation or the upcoming generation, they are very unforgiving. The youngsters,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, who are
Mhm.
going to become business owners, yeah, they are very unforgiving, and they want everything. They want, they want everything right now, immediately. Because they work at that pace, their businesses, they operate at that pace. They want everything right now, at this moment point of time, immediately. And I think, accountants equipped with the right technological tool will only be able to serve this new age of clients.
Absolutely.
And one more thing, the accountants have so much pressure on them. you know uh, every dollar passes through an accountant, and there is so much currency going on in the world, and there are just so few number of accountants. There's
Hmm.
so much stress every accountant has to go through. They work insane number of hours. Young accountants, and some are not really able to um, go ahead with so much of stress and pressure. Some do find a way to handle it. What do you think is the current mental health of accountants on
Hmm.
overall level, and especially during the tax season?
Yeah. During tax season, I think the mental health is quite bad for tax accountants for sure. Just because there is
Mhm.
this imbalance between them in their lives and their families' lives and the work that they have to do. In the US, they can file extensions for a lot of their clients so they can push the filing date back to October. That gives them more time during the year to finish these
Mhm.
returns. In Canada, we don't have that option. We can't file extensions. There is a hard deadline.
Okay.
There are some extensions for businesses into June, but for the majority of the personal tax returns, it has to be filed by the end of April. So that is a lot of stress that is
Mm.
on these clients, and what this does to the ecosystem of tax preparation and clients and tax preparers is that it becomes high stress, and it impacts everybody. How do I say this? It impacts everybody quite negatively and makes the whole experience quite negative. So it's a bad experience for the tax preparer. It's a bad experience for the client because their tax preparer is not returning their phone calls, or short with them, or just you know don't communicate with them. Everybody hates tax season because of this added stress that exists, and it has
Mm.
caused this idea around tax preparation that it's an evil that needs to be done. Well, number one, everybody thinks the government's evil, and now we have to pay them taxes. But if I think it comes down to, yes, there's a lot that tax preparers can do with their technology and their firm structure and the clients that they work with, but then there has to be a part where the tax preparers, or sorry, the taxpayers need to be informed about what is helpful to make these things, or make the filing process easy for them. And that doesn't get communicated because, like you said, people want it done right away. They want it done. cheap, and you're not going to get the right work done when you ask for those two
Yeah.
combinations of things, or that combination of those two things.
Right, right. And it's kind of painful to see accountants going through this. The deadlines of tax season, the putting so many hours every tax season, year after year, decade after decade, without changing their story, without doing nothing to improve their condition the next year. Okay, so this
Mhm.
year I did not have time. I had so much work. Okay, fine, what am I doing to make my condition better the next year? Nothing. Again, next year we are repeating the same story, and
Yeah,
the year after that the same story. So I think, would really encourage accountants to, please reach out to people like Mark, and please make sure that the next year your story is different, and the last week of the deadline, before the deadline, you should be partying and, maybe just going for a vacation. And that is really possible, if you go and seek some help uh, with, from people like Mark, who have who are just not preaching it, who have done it in their past. They are So Mark is an accountant. He has done that with his firm successfully in the previous years, and he's doing that for other clients as well. So, I think as many CPA firms, accounting firm, bookkeeping firms can reach out to you, I think they are would be getting some good lifestyle improvement.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
uh, yeah, I think that is required, man. So, there's just handful of accountants and doing so much of work. They deserve a better life. They deserve a better lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think I have just one final question. That is, do you think CPA firms are connecting to each other well? They're networking well. They are reaching out to each other well, or is there something they need to do more?
Well, I think they need to do it more. Part on my website, I talk about building connected and scalable firms, because I think firms are disconnected. Number one, firm owner is disconnected from their own work and life. In many instances, they're disconnected from their firms in terms of the clients that they work with, and the team members that they have. There's just this disconnection because everyone's just too busy for real connections. And then when firm owners are too busy themselves, there's no way that they're going to connect with other firms to kind of build a community. But that's what I'm trying to do. Firmnexus.com is built on this idea that, yes, you can get some coaching, but you can also get courses and you can get community for your firm, because a lot of problems that you run into as a firm owner, other firm owners have dealt with similar issues. And if we can, it's, there's so much work that there isn't, competition just doesn't exist. There's just so much work out there that you don't need
Yeah,
to worry about sharing trade secrets, because you can share certain things, but it's all about doing and implementing, right? An idea is only as good
yeah,
as its implementation, right? And so I have no problem sharing all my secrets, because yes, I share some really detailed templates and workflows in my courses and in my coaching. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what a firm owner does and what a firm owner wants, because they can listen to all the podcasts, all the audiobooks, all the influencers they want, but it comes down to action to make real change. So yeah, connect with other
yeah.
firms, leverage other information out there so you can grow faster and enjoy a better lifestyle.
Awesome, Mark. Um, I really cannot say much about the important work which you are doing. So, I look at your work as the work of a superhero. So you're kind of the superheroes amongst the accountants like me, who are helping firms like mine, other firms, to improve, to be more prepared, to understand where they're going wrong, and not just that, you just, you just don't come and just tell that guy, hey man, you have to do this and do this and do that. You handhold the firm owners, uh, help them set up the processes, and you're along with them throughout their journey. So I think you're doing a I'm from India, but I can relate to the problems of an accountant anywhere in the world, because it's the same thing. The governments are the same, taxes are the same, accountants are always handful, and yeah, manpower, that has it is a problem everywhere. So awesome, Mark. I'm really happy, and I really would encourage, not just my our CPA friends in US or Canada, but also our CA friends in India. If they can learn from your process, learn from your experiences, I think they can see significant growth improvement in the process, and have finally more time for their family and for themselves.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really feel we have too much of experiences in your mind, which I have not fully tapped. I think we may need to do another podcast, so to get more of experiences, more of those wisdom out, so that we can share it with our fellow CPAs.
Absolutely. Anytime, anytime. Thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think it's important that we talk about these things so everybody can improve together.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.